for Saturday. It's gonna be above freezing.
I know. It's over. It's I know. It's
Cold spell. And we had that snow and then the rain,
Okay.
freezing rain. We wound up with like an inch of ice. It's still there, we had to get it salted.
That's
No
a
salt.
walk.
There's no salt. Did you
Not
walk?
left. There's no salt.
No.
No.
Well,
I did, but it was
flour
very
hats.
invigorating.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it's over.
Yes,
Yeah.
so-
Trump is blaming the Obama administration for lack of salt.
Oh, well, yeah. Why doesn't he blame, FDR for everything, you know?
Lincoln.
Why not?
Blame Lincoln. Anyway, yeah. King George.
It's Ukraine's fault. Is that something?
Yeah, they started the war, as you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's lying is it's a cottage industry in Washington.
It's a cottage industry almost everywhere.
Yeah, well, hopefully it's not
This
going to be
is
happening
most
here.
blatant. I mean. just
Yeah, well, it's
Ukraine
just-
started the war,
Yeah, sure.
and he'll get people to believe that.
Oh, he's got lots of people to believe it. Well, the whole January 6th thing is,
Yeah.
it's disgusting. But country loves it. Or
I think he's
some of the
just trying to pacify Putin, because he knows how dangerous Putin is.
We're dangerous. Putin's not dangerous. We're dangerous.
Putin wants to get back in the worlds, on the world stage.
That's right.
They've been denied access
That's
to
right.
these
Yeah.
summits and stuff.
Yeah,
And they want to get back
yeah,
in,
that's right.
and
The good graces of the,
Trump's gonna let them.
right. And the reason Trump is going to let him is because Putin has something on Trump.
Yes.
That's what's going on underneath all this.
Oh, I wonder
Putin-
what that is.
Well, I could guess on a few levels, several levels, but that's what's going on. There's no reason why Trump would bow down to Putin unless Putin, who used to be in charge, the head of the KGB, he's the head of their CIA. He has something on Trump that could destroy Trump, in my view, and that's why that's why Trump bends the knee to Putin.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Yeah, well, there's no other reason.
And this thing with Elon Musk, I mean, he's, Elon Musk paid for all those, he gave huge donations, somehow Trump
Owes
let
him.
him be the president.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, well, this is how they do things. It's grotesque. But it ain't what my mama and daddy taught me. A couple of things. We're going to get going. So, and welcome everyone who's watching at home. It's kind of nice. We have 20, 30 people that watch at home. I wonder why. Write me and tell me why you're doing it. What's the interest, and maybe we could be of more service. We've been, if you saw the little lecture I gave on Sunday, I talked a little bit about liberation theology, and we've been mentioning it in our book discussion group too. It's come up through the book. So I bought some books through Amazon. They'll be in my office if you want to read them. This has to do with the modern prophetic movement. So here's Gustavo Gutierrez. He's really seen as the leader of the liberation theology movement in Central and South America. These people, most of them are priests, Catholic priests, and most of them, or many of them, let's put it that way, went to school in European divinity schools to get their theology degrees, PhDs. So I think he went to Göttingen in Germany. I mean, these are very high-level schools. And then they would go back to Central and South America and live in the barrios, in these sheds, these shacks. And that's where they did their writing. That's where they were priests in these horrendously poor places. So I find them interesting characters. We actually read these people, these authors, when I was in seminary at, Lily White Western Theological Seminary. We were still reading it because it was so interesting. The present Pope, Pope Francis, has been heavily influenced by these guys. Heavily influenced. And that's why he's seen as more of a liberal thinker, pro-poor, pro-oppressed, you can see it in his declarations and that sort of thing. Previous popes have done their best to silence these people. Why? Because the Catholic Church is very powerful, and they would like to keep these people's mouths shut, because they're it's hard to be for the poor when you are worth trillions of dollars as an institution. It's a little problem of integrity. Anyway, so here's Gutierrez. This is his basic one, A Theology of Liberation. It'll be in my office if you want. I bought 3 of them. Here's another one, On the Side of the Poor by Gustavo Gutierrez. Here's another one
Is he
by.
still alive?
I think so. I want to say he is. It was 40 years ago. Maybe. Gustavo Gutierrez. And then here's an introduction of his theology by an American by the name of Robert McAfee Brown, who in this country was sort of the megaphone for liberation theology, who wrote another book of his own, Liberation Theology. We read all this stuff in seminary. Okay, so that's that. And also, from my little talk on Sunday, some of it came from this book, which is really good. It's a little tiny book. Lauren Mead, The Once and Future Church. It's about Constantinian Christianity and how it developed into Christian nationalism. That kind of stuff some of it came from here. Some of what's in my head came from here. And then, how it's become ruinous to the Christian church and to the nation at the same time. So that's that.
And then there's the seminar on prophecy at Faith Assembly that I will announce because I'm going.
You're going to go, yeah, on prophecy.
Yes, prophecy, March 1st.
Well, I don't know. I'm not going, but I'd like to know what. Get a report from you.
Video it or whatever.
Oh, I'm sure it'll be video.
Maybe
Yeah.
you could sit afterwards.
Yeah, right.
I don't know if they'll do it live, but March 1st, then I'm going to learn about their view. of
Yeah.
prophecy.
It's going to be very different than what we're talking about here.
Well, I
Very different from.
I know some of where they come from.
Yeah, I do too.
A lot of where they come from.
Yeah.
And just interesting to me.
Sure.
I think this whole thing on prophecy between you and them and what's going on is going to be my newest obsession. And
Okay.
I might be reading some of your books.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. Are there differences between the biblical prophets
Yeah.
and Jesus as a
Yes.
prophet, and what is what's understood in evangelical circles as prophecy? I think are going to be two different things.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Where is the seminar?
It's at the Assembly of God in Poughkeepsie on Route 9.
Oh,
Mhm.
It's,
so whereabouts on Route 9, north, south?
oh gosh, it's kind of northish.
Yeah.
It's over by IBM, isn't it?
Huh?
Yes, right.
It's over by the old IBM building.
Across.
Yeah, I've been there a few times.
It's March 1st. It's this guy that's doing it, that they brought in to do it,
Mhm.
is billed as a prophet,
Mhm.
and
Yeah,
I don't know, I've been looking up little stuff.
yeah. I would like to know if he's a Republican.
Uh,
If he's a Republican, then I've got a pretty good bead on him.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I would say.
Well,
And most of them are. Most of them
I
are
think
Republicans.
Most of the people that go there
Are Republican. Yeah, and therefore I would say in error.
More,
Yeah,
oh,
that's
yeah.
what I would say.
I don't know, I'm just kind of interested, and your comment about the prophets are coming is fascinating.
Oh, yeah,
to me. I'm
yeah.
just like wondering, you know, like this guy is billed as a prophet, I doubt that he is one of the prophets that are coming.
I doubt it. Yeah, I doubt it.
But that,
But you don't know. I don't
you
know.
can test, you
Yeah,
know,
I don't know.
test it all.
Well, for me, here's the test. I want to just review last week's session because we weren't online, and I know other people want to catch up. So, you know, what are the major themes of the prophets in the Old Testament? And also, I would add with Jesus. So, if people want to call themselves a prophet in the classic sense, the biblical sense of prophecy, what did the prophets talk about? Well, they talked about justice for the poor. So if you at Faith Assembly, if they're talking about justice for the poor, I would check that box.
I do.
Okay, great. Are they critical of religious and political leadership? Would they go after President Trump, for instance? They need to. If they want to check the box, they have to check that box
Right?
because he is an evil man. And then I have here too, that there's a new day dawning. Is there a vision? The Old Testament prophets, so often we'll see it in a minute.
Oh, yeah.
They have a vision for something new. That there's a progression or a revolution, maybe, at times.
They would say that it's coming, something new.
Something new is coming. Yeah, yeah. So, and then what might be the content of what's coming? You know, not just. I mean, anyone knows something's coming. I mean, I know that.
Yeah, well, yeah,
Right. What is it? What is coming? So, and how specific are you going to be? I think that's important too. And then, you know, how did the prophets fare? I mean, somebody can be a prophet. Are they willing to be in a crosshair? Because, you know, typically a prophet will be pushing against the status quo, and therefore will put themselves in danger. So that's very consistent in the Old Testament. Obviously, with Jesus, he's crucified for truth-telling. And then we said, is Jesus a prophet? And in what sense is he a prophet? And then what constitutes a modern-day prophet? Can they accurately describe what actually is? So you hear people just this past week, you know, saying that, that the Russian and what's the other Ukraine war, that Ukraine started the war. You know, and they, you know, prophets want to be clear about what is. And if you're going to start with a lie that is politically motivated, that is the antithesis of prophetic utterance. Prophetic utterance puts a light on the day. And so, you know, this sort of nonsense is going on, coming out of the White House again, which is horrendous, I think. What constitutes a modern-day prophet is someone who is able to describe, not in simplistic terms, but in clear terms, let's put it that way, what is going on. And that would be interesting to see if they can pull that off. It's not so easy.
Yeah.
It's not so easy.
I think there's gonna be a question and answer session too, so.
I'm sure, yeah,
If I
yeah,
can develop the right questions.
yeah. Yeah, okay. And then last week we talked about why are the prophets so often killed?
They speak truth to power.
They speak truth to power. If you're not doing that, you ain't no prophet. You're just part of the status quo and so on. There are also many false prophets in the Bible as well. Just so you know, it goes back and forth that way, and usually, almost always, a false prophet will be they will be in the camp of the powerful. So. For instance, when I vote, especially for president, I listen to the candidate, of course, but they're always surrounded by people. I want to know who those people are, because those are the people that are talking to the candidate. And so that's really an easy way to kind of figure out where they're coming from, is to identify who's around them, who's close to them. That's really useful, I think. Those are the people that are in the candidate's ear. So, all right. So that's that. So I thought we'd take a couple weeks to look at passages in the Old Testament where there's interaction with a prophet. They're doing their thing, and how the interaction works. These are just my favorites, so. But there are lots of them. And why don't we take a look at Ezekiel 37? Everybody there? I'll give you a little background. At this point, Israel, and this happens throughout history, of course, it's happening now with Trump, there's idol worship. In other words, people are putting on a pedestal something, or usually it's someone, that stands in the place of God. That's idol worship. And so whatever that person says, they take as gospel, they take as authoritative, and they give away their own authority and offer it to someone, almost always someone else. That's what's going on in Israel at this time. And as a result, as also what always happens, is that the destruction of the nation is not far behind. If in other words, if you give your life over to someone who is not worthy, truly worthy, or if you give yourself over to someone who is not God, you're cruising for a bruising. And if that's done en masse, like if the nation is going for it, which is what we're doing, this is happening here in the United States with Trump. People are giving over their wills, their lives, their worldviews over to this maniac. And as a result, the nation is going to collapse. This happens always. I mean, this is nothing new. But what's new is we're going through it, which is odd, right? I mean, I never thought we'd have to go through something so catastrophic, but we are. We're going through it. So at some point, we're not there. We aren't there yet, but Israel is at this point now, where the nation, because of that, has just eroded, and now it's just sort of just a field of bones. And there was this great battle, and God sets the prophet up to take a look at this valley of bones. And the bones will represent the nation. And the famous question is, can these bones live? In other words, can the nation resurrect. And the prophet isn't so sure. Things get bad, you know. And so you want to read it? It's a neat little story if you haven't read it before, if you don't know it. Ezekiel 37. Somebody want to read the first, I don't know, 6 verses?
The hand of the Lord came upon me, and he brought me out of the spirit of the Lord and set me down in the middle of a valley. It was full of bones. He led me all around them. There were very many lying in the valley, and they were very dry. He said to me, "Mortal, can these bones live?" I answered, "O Lord God, you know." Then he said to me, prophesy to these bones, and say to them, O dry bones, hear the word of the Lord. Thus says the Lord God to these bones, I will cause breath to enter you, and you shall live. I will lay sinews on you, and you will cause flesh to come upon you, and cover you with skin, and put breath in you, and you shall live, and you shall know that I am the Lord.
Okay. So can somebody wrap this up and put it in your own words? What's being said here?
He's crying out to the Lord to resurrect this valley of dry bones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Bring it back to life.
Bring it back to life. Yeah. Anybody add to it? Has the prophet given up?
Well, he does what he has been told to do.
Not yet.
Prophesies.
Yeah, okay, not yet. He hasn't done it yet, though, right?
Well, in verse 7, so I prophesied.
Yeah, we're not at 7 yet.
Commanded.
Okay, not at 7 yet.
Yeah, I know.
So he's up, up higher, so we can see this valley, right, of dry bones. And who asked the question? Can these bones live?
God.
God asked the question to the prophet. Can these bones live? And does the prophet give a rousing answer?
No.
No. What does he say?
You know.
You know.
You know.
Because I don't know.
I don't.
I don't know. I don't know. But you know. Can these bones live? That'll be the question for the next 10 years, and I think in the United States, people will be asked that question: can these bones live? Because it's going to be a valley of bones, I think. Can these bones live? Can resurrection happen even though there's been catastrophe? Are there any examples of it in history that you know?
Of a nation coming back?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not that good at history.
Yeah?
Israel does periodically
Yeah?
come
Kind
back.
of come back from the ashes?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, all right. What about like the Marshall Plan? Do you know that one?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. After World War II, General Marshall came up with a plan.
To restructure Europe
Yeah. And Japan. And Japan. Did it work?
Yes.
Yeah, it worked magnificently. Can these bones live? I wonder if he knew the story. Can the bones live? General Marshall said yes. So we pumped billions into Europe and Japan and maybe other places too. I don't know, but yeah, the bones started to rattle, and we've had friends ever since 1945. Really good friends as nations, right? So that was a good investment. How long has it been? 45? Is that 80 years? No. 45? Yes, 80 years. We've had really good friends because of that for 80 years.
Oh, Trump is fixing that.
Yeah, Trump is ruining all that. He's destroying all that. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, this is the end of the Marshall Plan, is that, as far as that goes. We're losing our
Well, does he
our friends.
really think that Europe is taking advantage of the United States?
Yeah, I think he does. He wants, yeah, he's lived like this his
I mean, I
entire
think
life.
China is,
Yeah, yeah.
but I don't think Europe is.
I don't either. I don't either.
Well, he's claimed that they don't spend as much money in NATO,
Mhm.
they should.
That's
and,
right.
They're not paying their fair share, and
Mhm.
everything with him is financial.
Yeah, it's contractual.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, he doesn't have any friends. Personally, he
Only
doesn't.
ones that
Yeah, but those aren't friends.
bend the knee.
Yeah, those aren't friends.
Yeah.
He doesn't have any friends. He doesn't know what it's like to have a friend. And it shows. That's how his leadership shows. He doesn't treat people as a friend because he doesn't know how to be a friend.
It's almost like he
Yeah.
pays people to be.
Yeah, right. Well, that's not a friend, right? That's a sycophant, right? It's sad. I mean, it's really sad. I mean, there are people like that. Elon Musk is like that too. He doesn't have any friends. These are people that don't have friends. They don't know what it's like to be a friend or to have a friend.
They trot over people.
That's right. Everything is contractual. And that is, I mean, there's a time and a place for contracts. But if that's how you see human beings, that is sick. It's a sick way to relate to human beings. So anyway, this is all happy stuff, isn't it?
Well, psychological.
Yeah, well, it has to do with your childhood, and if you're on the spectrum, and
His
if you're
father
on,
was a very tough man.
yeah, a very tough man. He was spoiled rotten, and he wasn't loved, and that is a terrible combination. We have that all over the place here in Millbrook. Kids who are spoiled rotten and not loved, and that just devastates a little kid's soul, and that's what happened to Trump. And so that's why he's such a broken creature. It's profound, and I feel sorry for him. He's so poor. He's such a poor person. Just a little man. He's just a tiny little person. So anyway. But here's the question that I think it's interesting in this story, that it's God that asks the prophet. God's got the question. Can these bones live? And the answer that the prophet gives is interesting, right? Right? Lord, thou knowest, right? Because I don't know. Which, he could have said, all things are possible with you, right? He could have said, of course these bones can live, because you're God. You can do anything, but he doesn't do it. It's so bad. It's such a bad situation that it reminds me of the resurrection of Jesus, right? Can the Messiah live? And I think the disciples have the same sort of reaction, right? I think their answer really is no. It's over. Can those bones live? The bones of Jesus. Can those bones live? I'm pretty sure they thought, no, it's absolutely over. And then it's the Holy Spirit that comes, right? And witnesses in their bones. Their bones come to life. And isn't that interesting that it's not just the dead bones that have to come to life, but it's the living bones that have to come to life, too, right? Yeah, the prophet's bones have to come to life. And then there has to be a resonance with life and death. And then, so we'll see what happens, right? So let's take a look at 7 to the end of 10, let's say.
Does anyone else want to read?
Just knock us out.
Yes.
So I prophesied as I had been commanded. And as I prophesied, suddenly there was a noise, a rattling, and the bones came together, bone to its bone. I looked, and there were sinews on them, and flesh had come upon them, and skin had covered them, but there was no breath in them. Then he said to me, prophesy to the breath, prophesy mortal, and say to the breath, thus says the Lord God, come from the four winds, O breath, and breath upon the slain, and they may live. I prophesied as he commanded me, and the breath came into them, and they lived, and stood on their feet, a vast multitude.
I can see it.
Can you? Yeah, me too. Yeah, me too.
So it did come together.
Yeah.
Is there a movie made about
I'm sure there's been a movie. Yeah, it's a great scene,
I
right?
mean, and the rattling?
Yeah, the rattling. And the bones and the bones, and you know that song too. There's a song that goes with it, of course. Yeah. Well, there's a development, right? So the prophet says yes, right? So he prophesies to the bones. Imagine. He's speaking to bones,
Yeah.
right? You see it? Do you see it?
God told him to.
Yeah, go do it. So.
Prophets ordinarily do what God says.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I agree. Otherwise, you're in pretty deep trouble. But speaking to bones
I know it's
is something,
quite
don't you think? I mean, it's an odd vision. Sorry?
Creepy.
It's creepy. It's weird and creepy, and it's this battlefield. There's all these, you've got bones with knives in them and swords in them, and it's from a battle. So there's they have these
So they're just bones. They're not. It wasn't a recent battle.
right. Yeah. Well, it doesn't take very long in the Middle East to get picked clean.
No.
So I don't know when that battle took place. I'm sure scholars know when, but I'm not a scholar, so this is all you get. So yeah, he's talking to bones. I mean, that would get you into Pine Rest Christian Hospital if you did something like that, right? I mean, that's a crazy thing to do.
So what would he say to them?
Arise? What would you say? What would you live?
Well, when you say prophecy, I mean, what does that mean? Prophesy.
Thus says the Lord. Thus says the Lord. Right? He's. My phone's blowing up. I don't know if people are watching this. Anyway, what would you say? Rise. Rise. Prophecy to the bones.
And say to them,
Okay.
O dry bones, hear the word of the Lord. Thus says the Lord to these bones, I will cause breath to enter you, and you shall live. I will lay sinews
Yeah.
on you. Blah, blah, blah.
So that's what he said.
That's what he says.
That's what he says. To bones.
The bones.
Yeah, a big, huge field of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands
With
of.
a rattle.
Yeah, and they start to rattle. Is he by himself? I think he is.
Is he what?
All by himself. Is there anybody else there watching this? It doesn't say. I don't think so. I think he's all by himself.
It's just the Lord and
Yeah,
this empty battlefield.
yeah, yeah,
The bones.
yeah. Have you ever, I've prayed the prayer before, can these bones live? When you see horrible situations. Yeah, see families or communities are, going through hell. Can these bones live? And maybe for us now, the nation. Can the bones live? Yeah, it's a good question. And prophecy to the bones. And they all start rattling, and sinews and flesh. And then there's one thing missing. Ruah, the breath of God. The Ruah. It's Hebrew for the breath of God. Yeah.
Same with Adam, right? When he was
Right.
formed.
That's right.
Needed to have the breath
That's right.
into him.
That's right. The Ruah. Yeah. R-U-A-H. I think is how you spell it. Ruah. The breath of God. Yeah. Otherwise, it's not going to work. The bones won't live unless you get the breath of God. Why can't they have their own breath? That's kind of interesting, isn't it?
Well,
Why do you have to have the breath of God?
because only God's breath can bring the dead back to life. Only his breath.
Is it? I don't know this. I've wondered this since I was a kid. Are we breathing the breath of God, even when you're just alive? Is God keeping us alive?
Wow.
How independent are we really? I don't have an answer to that, but I've wondered it since I was a little kid. High school, since I was in high school. Is God keeping?
Well, he's always near us,
Yeah,
guiding us,
yeah.
talking to
But
us.
keeping us alive too?
I think
I
so.
think, yeah.
Yeah. So when we're done, we're done.
Right. He decides when we're done.
When we're done. Yeah. Yeah. It's the breath of God. I don't know that. I don't know if that's true.
Yeah.
But I like the question though. How imminent is God in every person's life, whether you know it or not? I don't know. I don't know. There are days where I want that to be more, God to be more imminent than others. Because I'm so poorly behaved. Okay, well, that's a good example. Is that news? Last time you saw this passage, or have you ever seen this passage? Ezekiel 37, can these bones live? That is a question for every existential moment of our lives. Personal, familial, civic, national, world. Can these bones live? Yes or no? It's a good question. Really good question. You know?
I have to say the conservative Christians, the ones that are, the ones that are Trumpsters and so forth. I grew up with people like this.
Me too.
This is a big, I'm very familiar with this passage.
Yeah.
They love to preach on this
Yeah,
passage.
yeah. Well, it's very dramatic.
It's a very dramatic.
Very
passage.
dramatic, wonderful passage. Yeah, wonderful. Yeah. Where do you take this and point it is really the homiletical task, as we would say. Where are you going to point that thing? And what do you? Are there some bones that need to be laid to rest? It's another question. The flip. Flip the passage. What bones need to be buried? Good question, right? Some bones need to be buried. You got to bury things, dead and buried, and good riddance. Not all bones. I don't want all bones to be resurrected. Do you? Yeah, it's a good question, right? Yeah. It's called inversion. If you get kind of stuck with a question, an issue in your life, you invert it. So rather than say how can Lyall be successful in the years to come? It's a good question. It's a fair question. A good way to go about things. But when you invert it, an inversion would be, what would Lyall do to ruin their future? That's inversion. Also interesting, and it's another way to kind of look at something from a different point of view. And Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's old partner who died last year, he was famous. He loved inversion. You know, what must we do to screw this up? You could say to the country right now, what must we do
We know what
to ruin this? Right? Right?
working on.
You know, offend and ostracize our friends, right? Kick people out, especially if they're poor. Put them in harm's way, right? Ruin the economy, ruin the health of the nation. Have no kind of safeguards for businesses, right? Let them run riot in the world. Do nothing about global warming. Deny its existence. You know, those are pretty big ticket items, I would say. Trump is doing all of
How can
those.
you be in denial about global warming?
Because you don't care
When you
about,
have, these PhDs telling us.
of course. I mean, it's
He
incontrovertible.
knows more than anybody else.
Yeah, he knows more than anybody else, and he also doesn't care about people. He cares about himself.
Well, him and his family could croak.
I don't think he cares about his family. I don't think he cares about his family.
What does he care about?
Himself. He wants to be a god.
He just wants to go down and,
He wants to rule over a pile of charred cities. Yeah, he's happy to do that. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, he's a very maniacal, evil person. Anyway, is this on? I guess it is. Okay, so let's take a look at another one. Another really famous story. It's in 2 Samuel 12. And this has to do, this is a, this one has to do with speaking truth to power. This is a really famous one.
Page 240 of the second Samuel.
Okay, thank
I
you.
don't know what 12 is. There, 248.
Okay, so you know the story of King David and Bathsheba? You know that story? Okay, so there's this hot chick on a rooftop wearing next to nothing. And David's the king, so you know what you can do when you're a celebrity. You can grab women by the whatever, right? You know that little story. David feels exactly the same way. There's nothing new under the sun, right? I mean, David is the same kind of person. So you know what I mean? He's slimy. King David is a very slimy character. He's got his good points too, but he's very slimy. And so he sends out a message to Bathsheba. You know, the king would like to have an audience with you. Right? We'd like you to have an audience with the king. Audience, you know. And so, you know, what is she going to do? She can't say no. This is King David. And so she happens to be married. David basically rapes her. We've heard that before, right? And she gets pregnant. My reputation's on the line now, says King David. Or that's what he thinks, right? So what's the right thing to do is to admit that this is what I did. I was wrong. There will be recompense. I will make it right as I can. No, he won't do that. Answer, kill the husband.
Put him on the front line. not
Put
the
him on the
middle.
front line and have the rest of the army retreat so he's completely alone and is slaughtered.
is that
Good.
Uriah Heep?
Yeah, Uriah Heep,
Right.
right? That's the group, right? Remember them? Yeah, Uriah, the
There
hit.
was this shop of, it was like a boutique of like hippie type clothes.
Yeah,
in Chappaqua called Uriah.
Is that right?
And I never knew where that, but there is a character.
Oh, there's a group, a rock group called Uriah Heep.
Yeah, I've heard
Remember that?
But also Dickens.
Dickens,
Yeah,
right.
Christmas Carol.
That's where
Christmas
No.
Carol.
Yeah.
Uriah Heep is in Dickens.
I think it was Copperfield or.
Right.
David Copperfield.
Yeah, and he was sleazy.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah. Well, in this case, this Uriah is a hero and is defending the king. He's defending King David in battle, right? I mean, the Bible is amazing, I think. I mean, what kind of holy book would have stories like this? You know, where the main characters are seen as horrible human beings. So, and God can, I mean, the message, I think, is God can work through horrible human beings.
Yeah.
Right? Isn't that sort of the message throughout the whole thing? You know? Okay, so here's another horrible human being, King David. So he backs off. He tells the generals to back off, leaving Uriah alone in the front. He's slaughtered. He's there because he wants to protect his king. The whole story's terrible. So the prophet, Nathan the prophet, finds out about it. And he's gonna have a little visit to the king. And this is what truth to power looks like. This is a really good example. There are many others, but this is a really good one, where the prophet is going to speak truth to power. All right? You want to take a look at it? Do you know this story? Everybody know this story? Yeah, you know it? Okay. Let's take a look at it quick. So it's 2 Samuel 12, 1 through whatever, 6. Somebody want to read that with enthusiasm?
Okay, Nathan condemns David. But the thing that David had done displeased the Lord, and the Lord sent Nathan to David. He came to him and he said to him, "There were 2 men in a certain city, and the one rich and the other poor. The rich man had very many flocks and herds, but the poor man had nothing but one little ewe lamb, which he had bought. He brought it up, and it grew up with him and with his children. It was used to eat of his meager fare and drink from his cup and lie in his bosom, and it was like a daughter to him. Now there came a traveler to the rich man, and he was loath to take one of his own flock or herd to prepare the wayfarer who had come to him. But he took the poor man's lamb and prepared that for the guest who had come to him. Then David's anger was greatly kindled against the man. He said to Nathan, "As the Lord lives, the man who has done this deserves to die. He shall restore the lamb fourfold, because he did this thing, and because he had no pity."
Okay, all right. So, nice little story from the prophet. What we read previously is, can these bones live? Prophesy to the bones. Here we've got a prophet face to face with power. I mean, great power, King David. And he sets a little story, right? Just a little gentle little story.
And Nathan is the prophet.
Nathan is the prophet. Yeah, I got this little story, I guess guy, did you hear about it? This guy has one little lamb and like a pet, and kept it in the house, they do. And got this other guy come over and they have a feast, and he's so selfish that he wouldn't slaughter any of his, so he takes it from this guy. He just had one. His pet, took his pet, killed it, so he could have a nice meal for his guests. And David gets on his high horse, deeply offended by that, wants to know what schmuck would do such a thing, heartless person. And then we have verse 7. Somebody want to read 7 through 15? Ruth, you want to? Can you read it?
Interesting that you're asking me to read this. I'll tell you a little story after.
Okay.
Nathan said to David, "You are the man. Thus saith the Lord, the God of Israel. I anointed you king over Israel, and I rescued you from the hand of Saul. I gave you your master's house and your master's wives unto your bosom, and gave you the house of Israel and of Judah. And if that had been too little, I would have added as much more." How far did you say to go?
Through 15, please.
Why have you despised the word of the Lord to do what is evil in his sight? You have struck down Uriah the Hittite with the sword, and have taken his wife to be your wife, and have killed him with the sword of the
Ammonite.
Okay. Now therefore the sword shall never depart from your house, for you have despised me, and have taken the wife of Uriah the Hittite to be your wife. Thus saith the Lord, I will raise up trouble against you from within your own house, and I will take your wives before your eyes and give them to your neighbor, and he shall lie with your wives in the sight of this very sun. For you did it secretly, but I will do this thing before all Israel and before the sun. David said to Nathan, I have sinned against the Lord. Nathan said to David, now the Lord has put away your sin. You shall not die. Nevertheless, because by this deed you have utterly scorned the Lord, the child that is born to you shall die. Then Nathan went to his house. My story is that when I was a real little kid, my father was preaching one Sunday night. He wasn't a pastor, but they did allow elders to preach Sunday night sometimes. And he was preaching on this, and when he said, when Nathan said to David, and they always use the King James Version, thou art the man, my family tells me I stood up on the seat of the church and said, thou art the man, to the congregation.
You did.
I was 4, maybe 5, and I guess he must have preached or said that with great power. And I just picked it up and told the whole congregation on Sunday night. And I just was, it's bringing tears to my eyes remembering that story from reading this.
A great story.
Thou art the man. And I got the lesson too. This indirection, and you can accuse people indirectly of things, and they might get it better if it comes in this indirect manner.
Yeah. It's a brilliant little story, isn't it?
Yeah.
That Nathan, he could have just come in like a hammer, That happens too, of course, in the Bible. People come in with a sledgehammer.
And that sets you up for kind of denial too. If people come at you too hard,
Right.
you back up and say, not
Right.
really, here are my reasons
Right.
for doing that.
Yeah.
But when you do it indirectly.
Indirectly, yeah. And really to kind of have the wisdom to know when to do what. Do you know what I mean? What's the proper approach
Yeah,
to
it's a good point, yes.
because there's a bit of artwork to this too,
Maybe he did the indirect approach because he was speaking to a king.
Yeah, right,
You
exactly.
know, he couldn't just come out and
Right, yeah.
accuse him.
Well, there was a Lutheran minister, Martin Niemöller. You've heard of Dietrich Bonhoeffer, haven't you? Yeah, well, Dietrich Bonhoeffer and Martin Niemöller were colleagues in Germany at the same time during the rise of the Nazis and during the Nazi, what do you call it? Rise of Nazi Germany. Sorry, I wish I wasn't getting old, but I am. And Martin Niemöller had a face-to-face with Hitler, literally face-to-face. And Martin Niemöller undressed Hitler right then and there. He was a Lutheran pastor. Both of them were Lutherans. And Hitler threw Niemöller in jail, in prison, for the duration of the war. But he said Hitler's instructions were, nobody's touching him. And they called him the Führer's prisoner. I actually knew someone from the Netherlands who was baptized by Martin Niemöller when she was a little baby. And whereas Dietrich Bonhoeffer, of course, was hung a couple of days just before the end of the war. They hung him. So, two different approaches. Some say that Hitler was so infrequently confronted that he was impressed by it. So, Niemöller brought a hammer. And, interesting approaches to prophetic activity. Let's call it that way. But, they both had prophetic qualities. Bonhoeffer and Niemöller. They both took it on the chin. They both went to prison. But one was hung and the other was...
What was Bonhoeffer's crime?
Dietrich Bonhoeffer was a pacifist who tried to assassinate Hitler.
Oh.
Yeah. He was part of the underground church, what was called the underground church. His life was in danger, so he came to New York City, some friends at the faculty at Union Seminary in New York. He taught there. Bonhoeffer did. Wrote some really important books. He died, I think he was 39 when they hung him. Very promising theologian. But when he was in New York, he felt so guilty about being saved that he got on a boat and went back to Germany to be with his people, his congregation.
German?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, German Lutheran pastor. Yeah, so, just certain death. I mean, a lot of people thought, they're going to kill you if you go back home, in which they did, of course. But, what are you going to do? You got to be true to your calling. What's the worst that can happen? Anyway, it's noon. That's a great story, right? Good old Nathan, And we've got another really good one, too. The next one next week is 2 Kings 5. We'll read that one next week, too. But so often, these stories of the prophets are having to do with either enormous problems like the bones, or having to do with facing powerful people. So these people are they're a lot of fun. Okay, well, God bless you, and God bless you those watching from home, and I know some of you are because you're on my phone.